What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Cy Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, known as Cy. Unfortunately, not joined by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Cy Guys, Mr. Tad the Cy. I think he mentioned this on an episode, couple episodes ago. I think it was right before our Pete Carroll episode of our head coaching deep dive series. He's dealing with some back issues. Unfortunately, it's led to us, discussing as far as, how we'll be able to fit in some recording time here or there. He's seeing a bunch of specialists and trying to get things figured out. So unfortunately, for the short time being, he will not be part of the podcast to try and figure all things out. So 100% wishing him the best. Hope that everything will be okay and that he'll be able to come out good as new, no longer dealing with any back issues. But I will keep you guys posted with everything that's going on with him. But yeah, so I'll be doing this episode solo. So if you enjoyed those couple episodes I did back at the beginning of the year, I think one was at the very end of the last year. I think it was like right on New Year's Eve was when I posted one of our episodes. But if you enjoy those episodes where I went solo, well, congratulations. You'll get this one plus the next one to close out our head coaching series as well, where we're talking about Brian Schottenheimer as the final episode in our coaching series here. If you missed Tad, then, I don't know what to tell you. Hopefully he'll be feeling better soon and he'll be back on the podcast, giving us his hot takes and his questionable impressions and just everything in between there. But yeah, as mentioned, we're going to be continuing on with our head coaching series. This is a very exciting one. I'm actually kind of, upset that Tad will not be joining us for this episode because this is episode dedicated to our very good loyal listeners of the podcast. That would be Matt and Jay talking about the Chicago Bears and their new head coach, Ben Johnson. And really quick, I'm going to share this video on our social media account in case some people just haven't noticed it before. But there was a incident that he just had where he was bike riding and he just wasn't paying attention to what was in front of him. He just had his head down. He ran into a cop and literally flipped his bike over. It was actually quite surprising that he didn't pick up any of this at all. Maybe even just the flashing lights of the cop car, whatever it was. But yeah, he literally flipped his bike over. He's perfectly fine, but just, yeah, it was a very interesting sight to see. And so, yeah, as mentioned, in case you haven't seen that video, I will share it on our social media account so you guys can sort of see just the madness that is coming to Chicago with Ben Johnson specifically. But let's dive back before he's flipping his bikes to as the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. Let's dive into his coaching history here. Not as extensive as one of our previous coaches that we did with Pete Carroll. That was just absolutely robust. Lots of information to dive into there. Ben Johnson, a little bit shorter of a college coaching career and played career as well. But yeah, let's dive into all of that here. So, walked on at the University of North Carolina, played the quarterback position where he competed with the reserve TJ Yates, but was unfortunately never promoted to the main roster in his 4 years at North Carolina. That was from 2004 to 2007. 2003 to 2007. That's got the years mixed up there. Eventually graduated in 2008 with a degree in mathematics and computer science. Actually used those degrees to get a job as a software developer right out of college with a company based out of Durham, North Carolina called eTelenex. And so that was actually a route that he was pursuing, not anything remotely related to football. Through some persuasion, though, his former offensive coordinator at North Carolina, John Shoup, persuaded him to join the coaching ranks with the Boston College Eagles in 2009. He was hired as a graduate assistant and was eventually promoted to a tight ends coach in 2011. It didn't take long for Johnson to get hired by an NFL team, by the Miami Dolphins specifically, to be a part of new head coach Joe Philbin's new coaching staff as an offensive assistant. In 2012, he got a quick promotion again just after 1 year. He became the assistant quarterbacks coach in 2013. he helped groom new quarterback Ryan Tannehill as he was 10th in the NFL in passing yards and tied for 12th in the league in the most passing touchdowns as well. In 2014, Tannehill ranked 11th in passing yards, throwing for over 4,000 passing yards for the first time in his career, and once again threw for the 12th most passing touchdowns again. In 2015, Tannehill this time cracked the top 10 in passing yards as he ranked 9th in the NFL, but unfortunately dropped to 15th in passing touchdowns in the league that year in 2015. In 2015, while he was the assistant quarterbacks coach to start the season, he was promoted to the tight ends coach in season after the Dolphins fired Joe Philbin. This is also the same year that Dan Campbell was the interim head coach of the Miami Dolphins, hence why Ben Johnson became the tight ends coach that year. In 2016, Johnson was named the assistant wide receivers coach for the Dolphins and held that position through the 2017 season as well. He helped Jarvis Landry earn his second Pro Bowl nod, started to make a name of Devontae Parker as well, and helped Kenny Stills score a career high 9 touchdowns that year in 2017. 2017 saw Landry lead the league in receptions with 112, and he scored 9 touchdowns, was ranked for tied for 4th in the league. Still scored 6 times and had 847 receiving yards, plus Parker chipped in with 670 receiving yards. So not bad numbers there for the receiver position group there under the tutelage of Ben Johnson. His success and his assistant saw him promoted to the main wide receivers coach for the Miami Dolphins in 2018. Fortunately, not as much success for the Miami offense led to not the greatest numbers from Dolphins receivers. Dan Campbell, not at the time, but just the Lions then in 2019 hired Johnson to be an offensive quality control coach for them. Then in 2020, Johnson was promoted to the tight ends coach with the Lions and held that position in 2021 as well. Dan Campbell became the head coach in 2021, and he retained Johnson as the tight ends coach due to their familiarity back in Miami, with him holding the same position. So you're sticking under Dan Campbell's tutelage there and his head coach front office there with Dan Campbell there in 2021. In 2020, this is before Dan Campbell, tight end TJ Hawkinson was ranked 3rd among tight ends in receiving yards and 4th in receptions. In 2021, his first year under Dan Campbell, he started as a tight ends coach, but was promoted to the passing game coordinator after Anthony Lynn was stripped of play calling duties after the half of the season. They started that season 0-8. Johnson was then given his first offensive coordinator job with the Detroit Lions in 2022. In his first year as OC at the Lions, Detroit jumped from 19.1 points per game in 2021 to 26.6 points per game, which ranked 5th best in the NFL. Detroit also jumped from 322.6 yards per game to 380 yards per game, which ranked 4th best in the NFL. The Lions offense stayed a top 5 offense in both 2023 and 2024, with Johnson leading the way. This includes in 2024 when the Lions led the NFL in points per game, and they are ranked 2nd in total yards per game. So, I mean, just in a short amount of time with the Detroit Lions under Dan Campbell, gave him a lot of control there. He was able to really make a name for himself and the Detroit Lions offense as well in just a short amount of time. But you can see a little bit in that short career arc that he had in the NFL, a little bit in college ranks as well. Johnson has been a fast riser, and this led the Lions division rival Chicago Bears to hire him as the new head coach. The hope is that he can revitalize this offense that is ranked in the bottom 10 in 8 of the last 10 seasons when it comes to total offense, both in yards as well as points scored on offense. So, yeah, he's got his work cut out for him, but I think he's got some promising pieces there with a lot of young players. Obviously, we talked about Caleb Williams, but they still got Rome Odunze. They just drafted Luther Burden as well as Colston Loveland at the tight end position. Still got a, very much in his prime, DJ Moore, running back with Roshan Johnson, DeAndre Swift. So, I mean, he's got a lot of pieces on that offense. The offensive line is hopefully going to be improved with some of the key trades that they made as well to improve it. So, yeah, there's a lot to like about this Bears offense heading into 2025. But I think the big thing that Bears fans wants to know is just like, they've obviously seen twice a year what the Lions have unfortunately done to the Bears the past couple of seasons. But, maybe they just didn't get a deep dive because that's only, a 2-game sample size there over the course of the last couple of years. But looking at just what Ben Johnson is going to bring over as far as his coaching style is considered, I think the biggest thing that we can see here is just like a lot of the top offensive play callers in the NFL, Johnson is very much a big proponent on building his offense around layered packages of plays. So very much, big fan of the layers, just like, onions and cakes and parfaits. Like, I mean, just a big fan of the layers there. This pretty much means that the Lions were able to run lots of different plays under the same promotion, excuse me. So, we could see a one running back, two tight end set, with two receivers on the outside and an extra lineman sort of situation. But in that same formation, you may think it may be a run, but they may pull that back and be able to execute a play. On the other hand, this also meant that they were able to run the same play, but they could disguise it with formations with the use of motion, possibly using motion, possibly just keep the formation the way it is, but just like, shifting around players, with just, pre-motion shifts. You got the motion, obviously. I mean, just, getting players in a position where they can take advantage of the defense put in front of them. Ben Johnson was definitely a master of just making sure he was getting his players into the right position to make sure that they were able to not only get open, but just get open and be able to make a play in the open field to gain big yards and just really move the ball down the field quickly and efficiently. And so, yeah, we should see a lot of similar formations at times, but we don't know what is going to come from a set formation. What is going to be a run? What is going to be a pass? What is going to be a play action pass? Could be even a trick play. I mean, Ben Johnson was not afraid to scheme up some trick plays as well. So, I mean, yeah, we'll see a lot of variety from, maybe some of base set of formations, but should still be very effective based on what Johnson sees from the defense. And yeah, we'll see how that connection works with Caleb Williams going forward to sort of set that all up. Like the modern day play caller as well, Johnson paired with head coach Dan Campbell like to use that 12 personnel. Just a reminder what that 12 personnel is. That is one running back and two tight ends. So during his coaching history, Johnson spent many years as a tight ends coach and likes to employ the tight end in dynamic ways. So, I mean, not just only keeping them in twin formation sets where it's like, you have one blocker, one going on a passing route, both going to a passing route, maybe both even staying in and blocking or whatever, but just utilizing that tight end in a various different ways. So putting them in line to play the standard, inline tight end position, also deploying them as H-backs, so sort of like, sort of going away for the fullback position, I know, but just putting him in the backfield and sort of offsetting him where he could sort of get a little bit of a quicker advantage to sort of scan to see what the defense is going and, either come out for a pass or whether he could set up the block for the running back, whether that was Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, but just sort of utilize him or as just any sort of way, but using him as H-back. Also putting him in the slot position. He had Sam Laporta for a long time. Before that, he had TJ Hawkinson, both very gifted receivers. So putting him in the slot position is sort of an advantage to sort of take advantage of that smaller defender. So Ben Johnson was not afraid to sort of do that as well. And then even there have been a few times, with the sort of gifts that, like I said, Hawkinson and Sam Laporta brought to the receiving game, putting him on the outside. Because, I mean, we obviously knew the threat that was Amon-Ra St. Brown, but outside of him, we had some injuries to Jameson Williams. He couldn't stay on the field for a long time. I know we saw late resurgence from Tim Patrick towards the end of last season. But I think, giving that sort of dynamic, big body, just, receiving threat in a tight end on the outside is just dangerous and just really able to play some bully ball against that corner on the outside and really just demand a good presence, especially the red zone for sure. Then you put him on the outside, that's an easy jump ball or even just, box him out, get that rebound out there. So just utilize that tight end in many different places and many different formations along the offensive formation there. That's definitely going to be something that we'll see either from Cole Kmet, or I think that's something that we'll see from the new rookie tight end here in Colson Loveland. He is more definitely a gifted receiving back. So, I mean, yeah, receiving tight end, excuse me, I should say. So we'll definitely see a lot of cross utilization with him across the entire formation. So for sure, we should see a lot of involvement from him. A few other things here. I mean, Johnson's also put a strong emphasis on the run as well as the pass. So, I mean, you look at the course of his history, very 50-50 when it comes to the play calling. So, I mean, we'll see, strong emphasis on the pass, but he's not going to be afraid to run the ball. We saw that a lot from Detroit with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs featured prominently in the offense, both those running backs. Both running backs scored double-digit touchdowns in back-to-back years for the Detroit Lions. They both also had over 180 rushing attempts in both of those years as well, 2023, 2024. So, I mean, yeah, I could see a situation where, we're here in the fantasy situation, which we'll get to in just a little bit here as far as who's going to benefit the most. But there's a lot of talk about who's going to separate themselves from this backfield, whether it's going to be DeAndre Swift, whether it's going to be Roschon Johnson, whether it's going to be somebody else. But I think this could be a situation where both running backs are going to benefit a ton because Ben Johnson likes to make sure that the defense is always on their toes. They don't know who's going to be in the backfield at a given time, whether it's going to be Montgomery, whether it's going to be McGibbs. They both brought different skill sets to the offense. I think the same thing could happen here with DeAndre Swift, who played under Ben Johnson for a season or two during his time in Detroit before he eventually signed with the Chicago Bears, a little bit later. So, I mean, he has some familiarity about what Ben Johnson is interested in doing on offense. Even though Ben Johnson was not the offensive coordinator when DeAndre Swift was there, I think we should see some very, chemistry sort of building there with DeAndre Swift in his offense compared to maybe a Roschon Johnson. But yeah, I think I like both running backs to sort of see a lot of rushing attempts and both be able to flash their skills in this offense. And the last thing that I just kind of want to throw out here that I think a lot of offensive coordinators do as well, is just overall his system is a bit of a chameleon, sort of just adapting to how the game goes. If he's really emphasized the run and finding a lot of effectiveness, then maybe he'll lean more towards the run. But if he's finding a situation where the run is not working, he's not afraid to sort of put the ball at the time in the hands of Jared Goff and be able to make some plays, with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson and Tim Patrick and all these guys to be able to make plays through the air as well. And just, if he's finding that good balance and sort of just be able to mix it up based on what the defense is presenting as offense, he's able to react to that and just really just, instead of just executing just scripted plays, maybe outside the very first 15, as, the adage goes, where it's like, all offensive coordinators, all game teams sort of have that 15-20 script play already booked where the very beginning of the game starts for the first offensive possession, as the game goes along, he's not afraid to sort of adapt to what has been working, what has not been working, and definitely what the defense is presenting him. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of things to be excited about what Ben Johnson is going to bring to this offense and really just establish just, hopefully a fresh look. I mean, there's a very, popular social media graphic that goes around pretty much every year, especially when it's in the offseason, about the 32 NFL teams' last 4,000 yard passing quarterback. And always on the list there, the Chicago Bears with 0. So, I mean, hopefully this is the season where we could see Caleb Williams get past that and become the first 4,000 yard passer in Chicago Bears history. Obviously, you have to remember they built their legendary teams based off strong defense, a really good running game as well. So very, old school approach. But yeah, with Ben Johnson, I think he's going to freshen that up a lot. Very similar to that parfait where, you're going to talk about this offense and be like, hell no, I don't like this offense. This offense is going to be very delicious, like parfaits. All those layers there, people are going to be very excited about it, just like Talkie was in talking about parfaits in the Shrek movie there. So I don't doubt that Bears fans, even fantasy managers, are going to be very excited about what this offense can present to them in the 2025 season and hopefully beyond that, and really bring just, fresh blood and really just, that really just excitement to really want to be a part of this offense and really just execute and be a little bit more unconventional from what we've seen for the past from the Chicago Bears there. So let's get to the main reason here. So obviously we talked about this, it's a head coaching series, but we do want to dive into which players will benefit the most when it comes to the fantasy season specifically. And guys, you want to keep on your radar as we're getting close to the fantasy drafts, because yeah, here we are close to the end of July now. This is when fantasy talk is really starting to pick up. People are planning their drafts and all that stuff. So this is the time to really start making sure you have your draft plan set, your strategies, figuring out your sleepers bust, which is all coming in our episodes a little bit later here in graphics as well, which I'll promote at the end of the episode here. But yeah, this is where from this offense, who's a guy that I think can benefit the most from this offense. And I brought up his name a couple times already. I already talked about he could possibly become one of the first, not one of the first, but the first quarterback to pass for over 4,000 yards in the wearing a Chicago Bears uniform. So I'm going to pick this guy. I'm going to go with Caleb Williams. I think he benefits the most here because prior to Ben Johnson becoming the offensive coordinator in 2022 for the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff finished as a top 10 fantasy quarterback only once in his career. As soon as Johnson was the offensive coordinator, Goff became a top 10 fantasy quarterback for 3 straight seasons, finishing 10th, 7th, and then last season he ranked 6th. So every year he also improved. Caleb Williams in his rookie season actually finished just outside the top 15 at the position in PPR leagues, ranking 16th. So he was very close to that. But The big thing here, which I sort of like about his promise, sort of speaks about maybe some of these other players where he finished higher than the likes of Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, and Kirk Cousins. He had 5 games last season scoring over 20 fantasy points, including back-to-back performance in weeks 5 and 6, as well as weeks 12 and 13. 2 of those performances came against the Detroit Lions, so Johnson could see firsthand what Williams was capable of. So I think that sort of possibly brought him a little bit of excitement when he got to the offseason and he saw what sort of offers were out there to become a head coach. Seeing that sort of firsthand from Caleb Williams, I think he probably saw it. It's like, okay, this is something I can work with. Saw a lot of potential there, but now being able to instill his offense, I think he can sort of take Williams to that next level to make him a very premier quarterback in the NFL. Chicago addressed their offensive line to make sure Williams gets better protection this year. The Bears allowed the most sacks in the NFL last season with 68, along with the Cleveland Browns were the only 2 teams to allow 60-plus sacks in the NFL last season. Williams last season had the 7th most rushing attempts in the NFL among quarterbacks. He was the only quarterback ranked in the top 10 in rushing attempts that did not score a rushing touchdown. So I think that could be something that could change heading into this season. That's definitely, like I said, bound to change. I think with Johnson, you got that utilization there. We may see some RPO action there with DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson based on how the running game gets affected there. Yeah, I could see a situation once they're in the goal line, Williams will sort of scamper in for a couple touchdowns on the season. So I think that should improve his fantasy ranks as well. But I think just overall, you look at this offense, you look at what Caleb Williams brings to the position, you look at just, all the promise that we saw back at USC with his running ability, his off script playing ability where it's like, play breaks down and sort of extend it, find the open guy, he's able to scramble with his legs. Obviously, we saw a little bit of that. So I think there's a lot of potential here. Just you add the creative offense that Johnson is going to bring to this Bears offense. I think just he's going to put him in better situation to make better plays. And I think Williams could be a very sneaky addition in later parts of your draft. We talked about this before where in your fantasy draft, let's say you want to address some of your roster as opposed to worrying about the quarterback position early on. Williams could be one of those guys that you want to draft like towards the end, which I think a lot of people may decide to ignore because they saw the season that they had last year. There may be a few people out there that's like Ben Johnson's going to come in and he's just absolutely going to revolutionize the Chicago Bears offense and he's just going to be one of the premier passers from the get-go. I think there might be some growing pains as well, obviously there. But yeah, I think there's a situation here with Caleb Williams that fitting into this offense, he could find himself being drafted towards the very end of a fantasy draft. He could be undrafted possibly based on the league settings that you have there, the number of members that you have in your fantasy league. But I can very much see him as a very good bench quarterback based on if you are a team that likes to sort of employ, one of those strategies where you have a backup quarterback after drafting your starting quarterback. But I think even if you were to use him as a QB1, I would not be too upset to sort of see that if you were to sort of end up in a situation where all the premier quarterbacks are gone and you're sort of stuck with sort of the dregs of the quarterback position now towards the middle rounds and maybe even way towards the end of the draft, I think you could do worse than Johnson. I think I like the promise that Ben Johnson is going to bring there. I like the given ability that Caleb Williams has that I think this should be a match made in heaven. I think there will be, obviously, like I said, growing pains for both Ben Johnson as a new head coach, as well as growing pains for Caleb Williams and this office to adjust to the system that's now being put in place. But I think there's going to be a lot of situations where you could see Caleb Williams scoring in the top 10 for the position in a given week. And there'll be enough weeks of that where he could sort of slide into the top 12 when the season is all said and done at the end of 25. But yeah, I think Ben Johnson coming in is putting Caleb Williams on the right track. I like this offense to be on the right track. So yeah, there's actually going to be some hidden gems with the Chicago Bears offense with all the changes that they made to sort of put emphasis on fixing this offense with Ben Johnson now at the helm there. So yeah, very much like Caleb Williams. I like a lot of the players as well. We're going to get into more about all those players later on in this podcast. It's purely just about the head coaching series here, but Ben Johnson bringing some excitement, bringing some optimism to the city of Chicago, bring some optimism to Soldier Field and Bears fans all alike, as well as fantasy managers. I think there's a lot to be optimistic about there, but that will conclude a short version. I think with Tad, I think we would have gotten double this time, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, this is sort of a benefit for you guys, a little bit shortened version of this head coaching series here. But yeah, like I said, this is almost the end. This is the penultimate episode of the head coaching series. We got the final episode coming up pretty soon with Brian Schottenheimer, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. That should be fun, exciting. I'm not sure how exactly it's going to look there. But yeah, so that will close out the head coaching series in our next episode with Brian Schottenheimer there. But yeah, I mean, as mentioned, this is the time to start diving into your fantasy research, diving into who are guys that you want to plan to draft when it comes to your time, based on where you're drafting, do a bunch of mock drafts or whatever it is. So turn back and listen to all of our previous head coaching episodes for the series this year. I mean, we did them all so far. Pete Carroll, Aaron Glenn, Mike Vrabel, Liam Cohen. All of them are in our database already. So this is the latest one for you. We'll have one more to go. But yeah, make sure you're tuned into our podcast because, yeah, as mentioned, it took us like about 2 weeks before we were able to post another episode here, trying to figure that all out with Tad. So make sure you're following us on our social media handles. You got us at Twitter. You got me at Unside23. You got Tad, TadSide94. Got the show handle at The Side Guys. And, of course, on Instagram at The Side Guys as well. So that's the best way you can stay up to date with all of our episodes when it comes to, the podcast as well as YouTube videos. And that is the best way you can also find all of our graphics because, yeah, as we're sort of going to be coming up on all of our position rankings for fantasy football in 2025, that will be all posted on Instagram as well as Twitter. So, I mean, guys, if you want those position rankings in case we are not able to do an episode or it takes a little bit of time or your draft is coming up or whatever it is, that is the best way you can sort of get some of that information as well in case you don't have the full amount of time to listen to our episodes, listen to our full analysis and everything like that. So that is the best way you can sort of get there. Get interactive with us too. We'd love to hear your thoughts as far as how things are going with your specific leagues. Do you need help with your specific drafts? Do you need help with keeper situations and dynasty trades? I mean, just everything and everything when it comes to fantasy football that is coming up now, guys. So, I mean, yeah, this is the best time of the year to sort of get into all that. We're ready to sort of help you guys get on the winning track when it comes to your respective fantasy football leagues there. But yeah, like I said, subscribe or listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And please make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network because without them, there would be no us. They're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to all the LA football teams, when it comes to the pros with the Rams and the Chargers. Training camp has started officially, so they're giving you all the breakdowns with position battles, who's looking good, who's not looking good, what to expect, especially with the Chargers playing in the Hall of Fame game in just a matter of a week as of now. We're recording here on July 24th. So on July 31st, we'll have the first official preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, with the Chargers playing in that game there. So yeah, there'll be, a little bit of a lead up to see what to expect in that game and the rest of the preseason as well. And right after that, we'll have the start of the season. It's coming up very quickly, guys. Probably a little bit more than a month to go into the NFL season kicks up. So they got you covered with the Rams and the Chargers. They also got you covered with the Bruins and the Trojans when it comes to college football level, because right when the NFL season starts, college football starts just right before that. So they got you covered with the coverage with the Bruins and the Trojans and everything that's happening there. The reemergence of the Pac-10 is coming back, so they may have a little bit discussion there. I don't think, obviously, UCLA and USC are going back to the Pac-10 or Pac-12 or whatever it is. But just, yeah, maybe a little bit of discussion formally being part of those, that respective conference. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of discussion there. But just, yeah, lots to happen with the college football season, early Heisman favorites. I mean, they probably got you all covered there, so make sure you're supporting them. But guess what? It is not just football anymore. The MLB All-Star break has already concluded. We're starting the second half of the season. We're coming up on the MLB trade deadline. So, I mean, we're sure to see some wheelings and dealings when it comes to the Dodgers and possibly the Angels as well, as far as who's going to be coming in, who's going to be going out, and all other 28 MLB teams there. So, yeah, it should be very exciting next week or so before the trade deadline is over. But they got you covered with the Angels and the Dodgers in their respective playoff pushes. And of course, it is the NBA offseason. We're in the middle of the free agency happening right now. It's not as lively as it was when it first opened, but yeah, we may see some wheelings and dealings and possibly some new sightings happen with the NBA. So they got you covered with the Lakers and the Clippers and their offseason coverage leading up to the start of the season up in October, maybe towards the end of September. I can't remember exactly there, but not just football anymore. They're covering the baseball, MLB, as well as the NBA with basketball information to go along with their NCAA and NFL football knowledge as well, all based on LA there. So guys, to everybody over there at LAFB Network, great people, lots of great content, covering a lot of great content producers. Definitely also want to give a shout out to one of our loyal listeners, podcast as well, Chauncey Talese, loyal listener of the show, and the other Thaddeus, maybe the better Thaddeus, I'd probably say as well. He's the host of LA Confidential, giving you all of that I just said, all LA sports news when it comes to, the Lakers and the Dodgers and the Rams. And I mean, just everything. He gives you a lot of that, but also all the pop culture information that you need with all the latest movies. I'd love to hear his thoughts about what Fantastic Four per Steps is looking like, Superman. I mean, just all the other movies, not just the pop culture ones as well. He's giving you a breakdown on all of that, plus TV as well. So yeah, make sure you tune into his podcast as well, guys. But that'll do it for our episode today. We appreciate everybody who tuned in. And yeah, as mentioned, we got one more episode of the head coaching series left to go, and hope to catch you guys there.